I just saw a video on YouTube talking about the subject of going to university in England for photography. Well, I don't think it explicitly said it was about England, but like all the figures were English fees and it was by an English person. And it's a topic I think about a lot, and so I just thought, what better way than to make my YouTube video myself and talk about it rather than writing something. It's a question I get approached a lot. If people are watching this who don't know me, I'm Alfie. I'm also a photographer. Not that one. Not Jim Morrison. Didn't photograph Jim Morrison. Yeah, it's a topic I get approached about a lot by aspiring photographers, and even actively practicing ones. And it's a polarizing topic, and it's one I've maybe flitted on different sides about over the years. I had a really shitty time in education, so I was really anti-university, especially with how much it got shoved down our throats when I was at college. I went to a creative sort of performing arts college, and so I'd already been studying creative stuff, which gave me a taste, I feel like, into what it might have been like. But in any case, I was never really interested in studying creative stuff to that capacity. And for reference, I've for the last year been studying English at the Open University. So I am at a point or a position to, I guess, an interesting point to talk about university, and especially talk about photography at university, because ultimately I'm still not doing it. So I'm still, in that capacity, on the same side as my 17-year-old self. Ultimately, this subject is one which has nuance, which a 5-6 minute YouTube video is not necessarily going to explore. And I guess that was my biggest frustration watching it, is that it doesn't explore that nuance. And I think for some good reason, right? We always have to kind of inspect how does one benefit off of the thing they're putting forward. For myself, for example, I don't really benefit from saying any of this, apart from it might elevate my status as an educator and might get me a job in maybe a university, which would be quite nice. And so in that sense, I am biased. I mean, I suppose if everyone boycotted universities, a potential future career path for me might be void, but I'm not really banking on that. And equally, I don't have a lot of faith in what I could provide as an educator in university settings, because I think photography is something that you teach yourself, and is, I've always loved a quote by Henry Cartier-Bresson, which is your first 10,000 photographs are your worst, and that's basically it. You just have to keep taking photographs. That isn't to say that university can't teach you stuff, and teach you a lot. I think the first flaw I noticed with the video was that Alan kept equating going to university as spending 50 grand, to the extent of writing down what you could spend in 3 years with 50 grand, and that's just not how it works. I think if we're ever going to have any fruitful discussions on any sort of topic, then we should maybe apply some, I guess, maybe academic discipline, or not even that, just nuance and really honesty, because that's just not how it works. If you're an international student, it is upfront from what I understand, but then it's 30 grand a year, and that's a whole other topic. I think we're all talking about students from the UK who are eligible for applying or paying for their degree through student finance, through a loan. And if you do that, you don't pay for it. You pay for it over the years, yes, but it is one of those ones where it's not really, it comes out as a percentage of what you earn above a certain amount. I think for myself, because I'm a more recent student, and I guess any aspiring students this will apply to as well, is 9% of whatever you earn above 25 grand. And so that's money, it comes out as a lot, but it's not spending 50 grand in 3 years. And I think that's just And I think class will reappear throughout this discussion of like how as an influencing factor, but class is an underlying thing, right? Like it's most people do not even have £5,000 to just fork out over 3 years on like camera gear and stuff. So that's one thing that universities do provide you with. Other than like resources and education in a way which doesn't like literally come out of your pocket, at least immediately. You also get things like maintenance loan, which can be a godsend and can be a way for you to live in a new city or live in a new place or explore your art with maybe a bit more of like free money, I guess. I mean, ultimately, maintenance loans aren't really enough to live on, especially not in London, and most students are skint. But then there is that aspect of being like a kid in a bubble, which is like really wonderful. You are a lot more carefree. You're able to live a life that you can't live once you're outside of university. You can go get pissed on a Tuesday night, do loads of drugs, and do it again the next day, and then like turn up to a lecture. You can just be like a total fool, and that is actually really important for if someone wants to do that. But it's really important for any person, but especially I think anyone pursuing an art form, because things are so serious, and it allows you to explore and experiment, and then you actually have the facilities to do that more. You can try out darkroom printing without going to like a dark room and having to like get taught by someone and pay that money and then buy paper and all of this stuff. It's more casual in that sense. Of course, I don't actually know because I haven't been to photography. I haven't studied photography formally, but neither has Alan. And I also feel like a lot of people who like engage in these discussions like are people who have like always been told to go to uni and then like never have, and so that it's the sort of video they want to watch. My point being that I feel like a lot of people who are like contributing to this noise, like myself, actually don't really know what we're talking about. But I feel like I know maybe a bit more than others because most of my age mates went to university, and a lot of my peers in the industry went to university, and I've delivered talks and stuff to universities and or like outside of universities, people have gone, and so I've been a part of a lot of discussions about this big overwhelming question of going to university or not going to university, and that's like some of the things I've noticed over time. I haven't admittedly heard a huge amount of like positive feedback on the actual courses themselves, whether it be the lecturers or facilities. I think COVID obviously screwed things up a lot. You got facilities or lecturers, and the lack of funding is like really fucking things up, it seems like. But then it's the access, and there's also the access. Yeah, it's access on a geographical level of being able to move to a city like London, for example, which isn't really easy to do at the best of times. But like uni allows you to kind of, even if it's just for 1 year in student accommodation, you get to be in London for a bit. On like terms which you just don't get as an adult, and it's that bubble effect again. You have access to facilities. Dark rooms are really expensive, and cameras are expensive, film are expensive, and if you're into that area, it's a really great way to see that. Even if you shoot digital, it's a cool space to be in, right? And then you get to just be around like-minded people, which is a really important thing, because photography and any art form, but I think photography especially, is a very lonely path. And so just to be around people and to have that peer group and just to have fun can't really be overstated, I feel like, as a value. It's definitely something I miss and I wish I could have had. I made that trade-off just kind of accidentally. I didn't really intend to, for reference, to be a photographer or to try and make a career out of this. But after my BA, I would like to maybe pursue a master's in photography. But I'd be more interested in like a research-based master's. Which brings me on to, I guess, the next factor is, it depends on if you want to learn theory or practical. I mean, I know someone who went to Westminster and they said that it was like loads of theory. they hated that, but that sounds really up my street because I'm interested in theory of photography. I'm interested in talking about it. I'm interested in the history of it. I'm not really interested in like having to produce a body of work for my marks or something. But that's because of my current practice and position. I'm already making my work. I don't want anyone else coming in to that and like telling me how to do it. However, I feel very devoted to the history of photography and its place as an art form, and its role in society. I'm interested in thinking about photography. It might be that you're in that sort of position and maybe academia is really something for you. I don't really know what like photography courses there are out there which are like super focused on that. I think the MA, there's only like one research-based MA I could find. It's the University of Gloucestershire. And that's online, but they do a PhD as well. I think they're the only ones who do that. I don't really know what like that would entail, but like that's like having a thesis and stuff, so it's like a bit above anyone who's like looking just to go to university. And then ultimately, like every university is so different. I think it's, you know, obviously we're not in a very good place with universities in England. Not the worst, but not the best, especially in recent years in terms of money and quality and all of it. But I still think it's unfair to just like group them together like that because they aren't a monolith. I mean, even if you were to like refer to every UAL university, that's kind of unfair because if you go to LCF versus CSM, it's two very different universities, for better or worse. You know, it depends on what you kind of want. I don't think CSM have a photography course per se. It's like printmaking, I think. But then again, like that gives an idea that there is actually like nuance within what you actually can study. And equally, like anyone I've met hasn't really done like just a photography degree. They've done either documentary photography at LCC, or now there's like a commercial photography course, or they did fashion photography at LCF or printmaking at CSM, or they did like a fine art course at Goldsmiths, which is something I also consider doing a master's in instead of before I decided to do a BA in English. I was looking at doing a master's in fine art and exploring photography through that because photography is also a fine art practice, but it's also a documentary practice. It's also printmaking. It's also got a massive role in fashion. Depending on what your career aspirations are, photography, your degree can help with that. Again, like take whatever I'm saying with a pinch of salt because I'm like, this is from like years of observation and talking to people, but I ultimately am like saying this from an inside perspective as a photographer, as someone who's like professional, I guess, but like someone who didn't go to uni. But like I know that CSM gets a lot of coverage from like the fashion people, like when they have the big shows and stuff. So if you go to CSM, chances are, and you make friends with those people, one of those people are probably going to be like pretty successful. Probably something similar with like LCF, but I think LCF is a bit more like chilled out maybe, and has like the people I know who went to LCF did like set design and stuff, which again could be really helpful if that's the field you're going into. My camera just bugged out. It's like a really old Amazon webcam I got from in like 2020. But yeah, as I was saying, like you might go to LCF and know someone who like does set design, and they might go on to like work at like you know, in like film or something, and you get a job as a BTS photographer, behind the scenes photographer, or something like that. Or maybe you end up becoming an art director. Because photography is something which is ingrained in our entire lives. It might just be a platform for you to step into other things. But I think for ease of discussion, we'll explore this in the sense of people who want to be a photographer and are looking to do solely photography. But then, yeah, you might go to, say, like Goldsmiths or Slade or, CSM even have fine art, I think, and do fine art there, and photography is your main thing because maybe your work blends into other things because that's still photography, and maybe your goal is to, like, have exhibitions and, like, exhibit with artists and stuff. That's a field which is like a whole other discussion and like with its own value, so I'll kind of like keep that to the side and we can talk about that at another time because that's also something I'm semi-experienced in, is exhibiting work as like the only photographer in fine art spaces, which is a very interesting thing because photography has a very interesting place in the art world, and just generally in society today. I have to think about what I'm going to say so I don't just go on a tangent, but we're in an overabundance of images right now. The photograph has never been so like diluted, but also like so important or so powerful in a way. Gone are the days of, say the photos which came from Vietnam and changed the West's views on the war, because now it's all instantaneous. It's all instantaneous though, and that is where the power lies. See how many times someone's put up a random photo and it's gone viral, and next thing you know it's gone from being on Instagram to then Twitter and then TikTok, and we're in this age of virality, and so the photograph is simultaneously like not very meaningful but also super powerful and scary. I don't know why I said that. It doesn't really have relevance to like if you're 18 looking to go to university. Maybe don't think about that, because you'll get all existential like I have. And also, that's the other thing with these universities, that they all attract different crowds. And they're all in different areas. Do you want to be in like Camberwell and study? I forgot Camberwell University, and be in like maybe a leafier part of like southeast London, or do you want to be like in the city and like near King's Cross and go CSM? Do you want to have your halls in like East London, West? All these things. And like aside from that, like what sort of person are you? Like I felt like applying to Goldsmiths because out of all the people I met throughout unis, I always got on with Goldsmith students most. But you might like, and I'm not like a super like, I'm driven in my work, but I'm not like headstrong about photography. I'd like call it perspective maybe. But maybe you want to go to CSM where it's a bit more like I'm on the grind sort of thing. I mean, like this is like, again, from the outside, and like this is just like my outward impressions I've gotten. Maybe you don't want to do photography as a career at all. Like you just want to study it and then like move on to other things and just use the fact that you have a degree elsewhere. You want to stay in like hospitality or something. Then it opens it up so much more. I mean, that's the issue. That was my problem with the video. That it lacked these other like incentives that people go to university, because all of these other factors inform your practice and make you a better photographer. I agree, I don't think a university can teach you photography or make you better. They can teach you a lot about photography, but it might be one conversation that you have at your student bar that then totally informs the rest of your practice. It might be a photo you take of your mate on the night bus home, which ends up launching your career or totally defining the work you make after that. It might be that nothing comes from university, and then 5 years down the line, someone you happen to like talk with in some uni kitchen is like wants to get you involved in a project just at the moment where you're ready to put down your camera. So I'm delving into sentiment, but I do think that the decision on whether one should go to university or not should also be informed by sentiment, because the university experience is particularly unique. I don't think I'm necessarily looking at it through rose-tinted glasses, or through a lens of the grass is always greener. I participated in that life as much as I could with my friends at the time. And from the conversations we have now at 25, 26, 27, the sentiment still remains the same, that those were some fun times. They're shitty because you're 18 to 21 and you're maybe working 2 jobs in order just to like afford stuff on top of your maintenance line. Or maybe you're super stressed out with exams, and at the best of times you're just like 18 to 21, so you're just like, life is just hard on you. But despite all of that, there's this funness and there's this bubble, and that's really unique and can't be like dismissed, I don't think, with this discussion, because you only get to go to university in that capacity once. Even now, if circumstances allowed me to go to a physical university, I would be outside of that. I wouldn't be able to experience that. Then there's the facets of identity. Maybe you're queer and you want to get out of your like hometown because you can't, there isn't a scene for you there. Or maybe it's a race issue. It could be anything. Well, maybe it's simply the fact that you're really creative and no one else around you is creative. You have to take into account those things. university, I'm lucky in that I was born in London, so I never felt that need to leave. I'm in the same room I grew up in. I've had access to these universities from the moment I was born, technically. But I touched on it earlier, and that university allows you to move to a city like London. I talked about that more in like a commercial career sense, or just like living somewhere. But there could actually be personal reasons that like make that a really important aspect to consider. University can be like a trial in that sense. Sure, like an expensive trial, but also not really. I mean, just think about how many people who go to university. None of us are drowning in debt. And that's where the conversation does require nuance, because it is just different. But then would I apply this to an international student? Of course not. So that's a complete different discussion. Spending so much more money and having to actually spend it. But as it stands right now with student finance and universities, you can do it without literally having to fork out so much money. And so yeah, there's those facets of like, yeah, maybe you're queer. Maybe you just don't feel like you're around your sort of people, and that university will actually provide you with that. And that's another important aspect. It allowed you to meet so many different people. And this might seem irrelevant, but as a photographer, it's extremely relevant. Because photography is rooted in the human condition. And even if you're a fashion photographer who doesn't want to think about anything beyond the image and just wants to make pretty photos of like pretty models, it's still related to the human condition. No matter what you might say, no matter what efforts you might make, every time you press a shutter, every single experience you've ever had, thought you've ever had, relationship, emotion, they're all concentrated into that one act. And so everything you've ever experienced will inform how you make every single photograph. You might save a lot of money, maybe save a lot of effort, maybe save a lot of stress, staying where you are, settling into like a more normal job, and just like putting that supposed pool of money into your photography itself. But you can only get so far with gear, equipment, even traveling. I'm kind of biased. I don't really subscribe to the whole like just use any money you have to travel thing. I don't. I think there's a huge amount to be found on your doorstep. And I think England especially, not just in a multicultural sense, obviously where you live is a factor which informs that, but on a political sense, on a social sense, we have real stuff going on in our country. Like, as in like real shit, like bad shit going on. You go outside, that's kind of what I'm getting at, and for university can open you to that in a way which isn't so serious, because it's like, if you're like 18 looking to go to uni, I'm not saying like go to your like local food bank and like start like photographing the people and asking them how their like financial situations are. That's not, I wouldn't give that advice anyway, but like in your circumstance, it's like you're young and you want to have fun and explore things, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that university allows you to like taste these things. It broadens your horizons. It might be that you do 1 year and you're like, fuck this, and then you can just change. You can change degrees because there is a flexibility in that. This has become a long video, and it's a very roundabout way of saying that. One, there's nuance, and B, it's up to you, I guess. But my point being more is that it doesn't have to be an intellectual decision, because photography isn't really intellectual. There's a huge amount of logic involved to it, but at the end of the day, we press a shutter based off of a impulse in our gut that we can't articulate. And so it is all about instinct, and then because it's all about instinct, it's all about feeling and emotion. And so I do think to a large degree the decisions you make pertaining to your career, and forget even career, let's just say photography is just an interest for you, go off that. It doesn't have to be anything too serious. I've never taken it too seriously. That's partly why I didn't feel like going to university, because in my position, the path of least resistance felt like doing what I was doing at the time, and now it's doing English. It might be for you that the most, that path is going to university. I suppose I've kind of digressed because the original video was about what photography schools don't teach you and stuff. And I do think that's a valid point. I do think that the lecturers maybe aren't always the best, or maybe they don't make work which inspires you, which is, a really important aspect. But I wouldn't dismiss what someone says based solely off of that. And that goes for any single person on a planet, and it goes back to what I was saying about photography being related to the human condition. Your biggest teachers can be the people you just meet on the street. They can be the source of your best photographs, but they can also just shape you into who you are. Be interested in your lecturers and don't dismiss them based on the work they make, just in the same capacity that you wouldn't dismiss your local shopkeeper or the person cleaning your streets or your barber or whatever it is, or your mum or dad. Photography is grounded in regular folk is kind of what my point is. The work a person does change the authority on which they're able to speak on something. I'm not ignoring that. I'm trying to phrase it in a sense of working with what we have. The situation isn't ideal. The courses aren't maybe the best suited for student experience or learning or development. But you can work with it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is to just go into university, or if you're going to contemplate university, is that having that in the back of your mind, that it's what you make of it, which can sound kind of cliche, but it's very true, and it's very true especially for photography, because they can tell you to take photographs, but what will develop your craft or give you a career in it or whatever such will be what you make on your own terms, in terms of your own drive and your own discipline. If people would like to ask me more questions about it, or more tailored to their specific circumstances, they're willing to email me at Alfie, without the E's, alfiwphoto@gmail.com, or you could DM me on Instagram. Same app. Yeah. There's just nuance. Oh, and they also have amazing libraries. I forgot about that. They have CSM especially. My ex-partner was at UAL, and got to see through some of the library collections, and that's a good reason, because photo books are expensive, and that can be a really informative part of your practice.